What's up, guys? Got the glasses on. It's time for Reading with Rob. Today, I kind of fast-tracked this book because A, it was easy reading, and because B, I thought you may be like me, you need this. Relentless Optimism, How a Commitment to Positive Thinking Changes Everything. So it's not a travel book, but I saw it when I was looking at a travel book, and I clicked buy. I did it. And these types of books I've read, off and on, self-help books, I guess you would call them, over the years with mixed success. Recently, I've read a few, like, I'm trying to think, something about finding your calling or whatever. It just didn't apply to me. I got like halfway through it and I was like, these are things I know already, right? And so the way I feel about a lot of these books, these are truths that we already know, but maybe we need reminding of it. And a book is a good way to kind of like remind you that a positive attitude does impact your life and it does impact outcomes. I think we all kind of know that by now, that negativity is toxic. It's rampant. Cynicism, especially in the last few years, it's gotten really bad in the United States, and I hate to see it. It's very tragic. And I know for me personally, launching a business, I can get in a vortex of negativity. And what I try to do is pull myself out of it by changing my perspective. How do you change your perspective? Well, the best way I know how to do that is through travel. However, during the pandemic, unable to travel, unable to have social interactions with people, which is another way that, isolated here, working at home by myself, which I've been doing. This is nothing new, not because of the pandemic. It's just how I roll. I don't have an office per se. It's in my home, and my people who edit and produce and work for me are freelancers, and they work from home as well. So it's, kind of like that new economy kind of thing. The problem is you get really isolated, and you might just be emailing people. Maybe you talk on the phone a couple times, but you don't have like that social interaction. And I always hated that part about working from home. But when the pandemic hit, obviously everybody got a little taste of that, right? Or you should have, most likely, unless you had to go out and socialize. And then you probably didn't want to, right? You had to go out and be around people to earn your living. And you would have loved to have been able to stay from home. So, it's got a lot of good things. The commute is short. The wardrobe saved a lot of my dry cleaning bills. But it's got some negatives as well. During the pandemic, it became really intense because at most I would be at home maybe a couple of weeks out of a month, maybe 3 at most, right? But sometimes less, sometimes 1, sometimes 2 weeks. And during the pandemic, like this stretch, I've been here since October, so almost 6 months without leaving New York City, really, to speak of. So yeah, I was kind of in a pessimistic frame of mind, and I'm like everybody else, struggling, no different from anyone else, having some highs and lows, but just kind of like drudging through day to day, waiting till we get to the other side. And waiting to live is a horrible thing to do because you're not guaranteed anything. You're not guaranteed tomorrow. You're only guaranteed today, right now, really. And so it's really hard to be grateful for right now when the right now sucks, right? You think it sucks. So what do? Well, you have to show some appreciation and gratitude, of course. But all of this is easier said than done. All of this, including what's in the book. So getting to the book, Darrin Donnelly is the author, and he has some themed books that's called sportsforthesoul.com. You can find out more about it. So what he does, he uses sports writing as a way to convey things such as optimism and sports performance, people that work in sports or actually make their living in sports, or amateur athletes, probably understand the psychology of sports, as we all, ex-athletes or whatever, we have played sports and we understand the metaphor that sports is for life, right? And at its best, that's what it serves to do. At its worst, it's a multi-billion, dollar money-making enterprise. But at its best, sports can really teach us a lot about life. And so he's really talking in this way through a fictional account of a minor league baseball player who's flirted with the majors and is having a tough time. He's struggling. He's getting older. He hasn't made it to the majors. and actually gets bumped down from AA to AAA. And, his marriage is on the rocks. And he basically meets this manager who's like a soothsayer. Wally is the fictional manager's name. So it's all fictional, but it's kind of set in the real world of baseball. So the guy, wants to play for the Boston Red Sox. He's playing for actual, in the book, fictionally, he's playing for actual minor league baseball teams. So it really has a realistic edge to it. Some of the dialogue is a little bit corny, but I understand what he's doing, and I think it's really a unique way to get a message across rather than just, through the fictional storytelling. It's a very creative way to get this message across. Basically Wally meets Bob, the baseball player, the protagonist here, and basically, I think it's Bob. Is it Bob? I think it is. I should remember that. My name's Robert, right? But anyway, Wally is coaching him. And so some of the things he says, it's just full of platitudes. Not going to go through them all, but one of them's like, first you have to eliminate all the negativity you can from your personal environment. This means recognizing the people and things that feed you negativity and getting rid of them. That's pretty harsh, right? But you have to do that. Secondly, you have to properly manage the negative things in your environment that you can't get rid of, like a boss at work or something like that. So it's not just enough to get rid of negativity, because you'll never be able to get rid of negativity. It talks about the relationship of the mental to the physical in sports. Mental is 4 times more important than the physical. One of the quotes I like, there's always more to be grateful for than fearful of. I agree with that. Anyone can see this unless they've filled their mind with cynical worldview. The only little quibble I have with the book is that if you're not a sports lover, like I just am not a baseball fan, but I thought it was pretty cool anyway. So if you're not a sports lover, you still may get something out of it. But if you are a baseball fan or fanatic, I think you might even get more out of it. I don't know. Maybe it'll be too unrealistic for you. But I like that. But my own little quibble was there's a moment in there where he's talking about, don't load yourself up with news. And I get the point, especially these days. A lot of people seem addicted to 24/7 cable news, and it's just literally, or the internet is even more poisonous, more toxic. And it's just poisoning their brain and their outlook. And to the point, I think, we all maybe have people, family members or friends who we just don't recognize anymore. They've turned into this bitter, angry person. And we're like, what's going on, man? What are you angry about? And I kind of get angry about that because I'm like, dude, you live in the most wealthy country in the world. You're not hungry. Luck of geography is enough to be grateful for. It's just not a lot of gratitude going around, and it's rough times. So I kind of get it, but this kind of was before, the pandemic. We kind of had this attitude in the United States, a little bit of entitlement. And, the reality is that we all are each responsible for our own happiness, right? No one guarantees you happiness when you're born. The pursuit of happiness actually is what, the founding fathers were talking about anyway, because happiness is fleeting. And it's up to you to find out joy. It's up to you to figure out what is happy and what's the difference in happiness and contentment. And I determined a long time ago, and you've seen me talk about it on the show, comfort and happiness are not the same thing. I've been more unhappy in the most comfortable situations, and I've been really happy in some uncomfortable situations. Times on a chicken bus in Ecuador, I remember I was just like really, really happy, man. I was sitting on the floor of a chicken bus because there were no seats available, but there was something about that feeling. I was in there. I was the only tourist on the bus. It was one of my early travels, so I was really attuned to these types of things and these types of feelings. And I was definitely the only, what I call a gringo on the bus, and I felt nothing but welcomed. I felt part of the community. It was a good feeling. It was a really good feeling, and there was nowhere else I wanted to be, despite the uncomfort of, lying on a bumpy bus without the proper shocks and brakes, and maybe even the safety features. It was worth it to me. And so I determined that a while ago, and that's why I fell in love with travel. Did this book change my life? Absolutely not. Will it change yours? Possibly. I don't know. It depends a lot, how you're receptive to it. But I love the premise of it, Relentless Optimism. And, what I really liked was you're going to get thrown some curveballs, no pun intended. You're going to get, kicked. You're going to fall down. And one of the messages that Wally has to, I believe his name is Bob, I hope so after I read this book, is that, not to let that get into your head too much, which is what was happening with him. And he calls it lies, Lies. Keep in mind that every, bad event is limited, it's isolated, and it's external. Limited, isolated, and external. In other words, when a bad thing happens, it's real easy to let it snowball and impact every part of your life and say, oh, this is me, I made this happen. And it really talks about limiting that. And so that's really good in sports in particular. If you miss something, if you fumble, you miss a free throw in basketball, whatever the situation is, you need to be able to have a short memory, right? The same thing in life. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all human beings. And we need to understand to forgive each other, but we also have to begin with forgiving ourselves. And a lot of the things I think that we see, a lot of the misery and cynicism and hatred, really, stems from that. A lot of people don't really like themselves. And so they're expressing that externally. And how do I know that? Well, I don't know that, but I know from my own personal experience because I've definitely experienced that in my life where I'm lashing out at other people when it's really me that's unhappy. And it takes some real self-awareness and constant discipline, and I fail quite often. But just reminding myself of that helps. And that's what I think this book is for. So it's to remind you of some of the lessons that you probably already know. But I think it's pretty cool. If you find yourself in need of a little boost of mental energy, it's an easy read. Look at the type. It's really big. It's not that many pages. The chapters are super duper short. So if you're not a big reader, don't worry about it. You can read it before you go to bed and just, let the information marinate in your brain. So again, it's Relentless Optimism, How a Commitment to Positive Thinking Changes Everything by Darrin Donnelly. Check it out. I don't know if there are used copies available. Don't know how long this has been out. But if you can buy from a local bookstore on Amazon or some mail order, that's what I recommend. Do that. Otherwise, hey, I'll be back next time. I'm still reading a couple of books all at once. So you know that there'll be more to come. So stay tuned for Reading with Rob. Thanks for tuning in.